3 very scary true horror stories. Like and subscribe so you don't miss our next chilling horror story with new stories every week. I live in a small second-floor apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It's not the kind of place where bad things usually happen. The building is old but well kept, with only 6 units in total. I moved in a year ago after breaking up with my boyfriend, mostly because it felt safe here. There's a friendly landlord, neighbors who keep to themselves, and a little grocery store just down the street. It was late summer when I first noticed him. I was on my balcony one afternoon, watering my plants, when a man walked by on the sidewalk. He slowed down when he saw me. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, wearing a faded baseball cap and sunglasses. At first, I thought he was just glancing up, curious, but then he stopped entirely. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. It went on long enough to make me uncomfortable, so I stepped back inside. When I peeked through the blinds a minute later, he was gone. I told myself it was nothing. Over the next week, I saw him twice more. Both times he was on the opposite sidewalk, looking up at my balcony. He never waved, never smiled, just stood there for a moment before walking off. One night, around 11 p.m., I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard faint footsteps outside. My bedroom window faces the back alley, so I don't usually hear much traffic there. But these steps were slow, deliberate. I sat up and listened. Then I heard it. The sound of someone testing my balcony sliding door. My heart started racing. I quietly grabbed my phone and crept to the living room. Through the curtain, I saw the silhouette of a man standing on my balcony. I couldn't see his face in the dark, but I knew it was him. I dialed 911, whispering into the phone. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and keep quiet. My mind was spinning. How had he gotten up here? There's no stair access to the balcony, only the fire escape, and that's locked. The man stayed there for maybe 15 seconds, pressing his hand to the glass like he was testing the lock. Then, just as quickly, he climbed back down. Police arrived within minutes, but didn't find anyone nearby. They told me to keep my doors locked and to call again if I saw him. I barely slept that night. Things went quiet for a couple of weeks. I started convincing myself maybe it was over. Then one evening, I came home from work and noticed something strange. My balcony chair had been moved. I always keep it tucked neatly under the small table, but it was now pulled out and angled toward the sliding door. My stomach dropped. Later that night, just after midnight, I woke up to a faint tapping sound. I froze, straining to hear. The tapping came again, 3 slow taps, right on the glass of my balcony door. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it at the door. That's when I saw him. His face was pressed against the glass, the brim of his baseball cap casting a shadow over his eyes. But he wasn't smiling, wasn't trying to hide. He just stood there, staring in at me. I screamed and called the police again. By the time they arrived, he was gone. This time they found fresh shoe prints on the balcony, leading to the fire escape. The lock on the fire escape gate had been pried open. My landlord replaced the lock the next day and installed a motion light above my balcony. I hoped that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 nights later, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a text from an unknown number. "You looked beautiful tonight." I felt sick. I hadn't been outside all day. He must have been watching me from somewhere nearby. I didn't reply, just forwarded the message to the police. They told me they'd look into it, but warned it might be hard to track him without more information. For the next week, I lived in a constant state of paranoia. I kept my blinds closed at all times, barely stepped onto my balcony, and jumped at every noise. The last time I saw him was a rainy Thursday night. I had just gotten out of the shower when I heard footsteps again, fast, almost running. I peeked through the blinds, heart hammering. There he was, standing on the sidewalk across the street. No cap, no sunglasses this time. Just staring up at my window in the pouring rain. He didn't move for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, he raised his hand and waved. I stepped back, shaking. When I looked again a moment later, he was gone. That was 3 months ago. The police never caught him, and I never got another text, but every time I walk up to my building, I feel like someone might be watching from a distance. And I still can't sit on my balcony without glancing down at the street first, half expecting to see that man standing there, waiting. I used to work the closing shift at a small convenience store off the interstate. It was one of those places that stayed open 24 hours. But after midnight, it was basically just me. The hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional long-haul trucker grabbing coffee. I'd been doing it for almost a year, and nothing about the job scared me. Until this one night. It was early March, still cold enough that you could see your breath when you stepped outside. Around 1:15 a.m., the parking lot was empty except for my car and a beat-up silver sedan parked way off by the edge of the property. I hadn't seen anyone go in or out of it. I was restocking cigarettes behind the counter when the door's chime went off. This man walked in, tall, wiry, with a patchy beard and a thick black hoodie. The way he moved was slow, deliberate, and he didn't make eye contact. He didn't grab a basket, didn't even look around, just went straight to the back wall where we kept bottled water. I watched him on the convex mirror above the counter. He picked up a single bottle, turned it over in his hands like he was reading the label, and then slowly walked to the register. His stare was unsettling. Not angry, not blank, but studying me, like he was memorizing my face. I rang him up, told him the price, and he paid in exact change. But before leaving, he paused at the door and asked, "You're here alone, right?" I forced a polite smile and lied. "Nope. My co-worker's in the back." He looked around the store as if trying to see for himself, then smirked and left. I watched him get into that silver sedan. But here's the thing. He didn't drive off. The headlights stayed off, and the car just sat there in the dark. An hour passed. Every time I glanced outside, the sedan was still there. No one else came in, and I started to feel trapped. Finally, I locked the front door, something we weren't supposed to do during overnight hours, and went to the office to call my manager. Right as I picked up the phone, the door chime rang again. Somehow the man was back inside. I had no idea how. Maybe I hadn't locked it all the way. Or maybe he'd slipped in while I was in the back. He didn't approach the counter this time. He just wandered the aisles, dragging his fingers along the shelves, picking up random items and setting them back down. I asked if he needed help finding something. He ignored me. Then, from the next aisle over, he said, "You shouldn't lie to me." I froze. My mouth went dry. I told him he needed to leave, or I'd call the police. He didn't move. Instead, I heard him whisper, "I've been watching you for weeks." That was enough. I went straight to the back office and dialed 911. When I came out, the man was gone, and so was the silver sedan. Police arrived about 10 minutes later, but they didn't find him. They checked the security footage, and that's when my stomach turned. The sedan had been pulling into our lot almost every night for the past month, always parking in the same spot, and always staying for hours without anyone getting out. Except for tonight. And the last frame they showed me, right before he left, was him standing just outside the glass door, staring straight at the camera. I've always thought of myself as a cautious person. I don't walk home alone at night if I can help it. I keep my doors locked, and I try to stay aware of my surroundings. But even people like me can get caught in situations they never expected. This happened during the fall of 2019, when I was living in a small apartment complex just outside of Columbus, Ohio. The building was nothing special. 2 stories, beige siding, narrow hallways. Most tenants kept to themselves, and I liked it that way. One Friday night, I was coming back from work around 9 p.m. The parking lot was dimly lit by a few flickering streetlights. I remember carrying my takeout dinner, my eyes scanning the lot automatically. That's when I noticed him. A man standing just beyond the farthest light. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing in my direction. I couldn't make out his features from that distance, only that he was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up. I figured he might be waiting for someone. Still, as I unlocked my apartment door, I glanced back. He hadn't moved an inch. That night, I kept thinking about him, but eventually, I shrugged it off. People hang around all the time, right? The next evening, I had a late-night craving and decided to walk to the convenience store a couple of blocks away. The streets were mostly empty except for the hum of a distant car. Halfway there, I felt that prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I glanced behind me, and my stomach dropped. It was him. Same hoodie, same posture. He was across the street, walking at a steady pace, his head slightly tilted down. But I could tell his eyes were locked on me. I quickened my pace, my hand instinctively tightening around my phone in my jacket pocket. I didn't want to overreact. I told myself maybe he was just going the same way. I went inside the store, and the fluorescent lights felt almost painfully bright after the dark street. I took my time pretending to browse, hoping he'd pass by outside. But when I finally paid for my snack and stepped out, he was leaning against the lamppost directly across from the entrance, staring at me. No phone, no cigarette, just watching. I hurried home, cutting through a side street and nearly jogging the last block. My hands shook as I turned my key in the lock. That night, I kept every light on in my apartment. I barely slept. Over the next week, I saw him 3 more times. Once outside my building again, once on the bus I took to work, sitting 2 rows behind me, and once the worst time, in the laundry room of my complex. It was 8 a.m. on a Sunday. I thought I'd be alone. I was pulling clothes from the dryer when I heard the door creak open behind me. I turned, and there he was, filling the doorway. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just stood there, his head tilted the same way, eyes locked on mine. I forced myself to break eye contact, grabbed my laundry basket, and brushed past him. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? A guy keeps standing near me and staring. No crime had been committed, not yet. 2 nights later, it escalated. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a faint tapping sound. It took me a moment to realize it was coming from my bedroom window. I lived on the ground floor. Every muscle in my body froze. I turned my head slowly toward the curtains, and I saw the faint outline of a figure standing just outside. The tapping stopped, but the shadow didn't move. I slid out of bed, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. As I whispered to the dispatcher, the shadow leaned closer. The blinds shifted slightly, as if he was pressing his forehead against the glass. That was when I saw it. A small, deliberate smile. The police arrived within minutes. But when they searched outside, the yard was empty. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I started packing my things. I broke my lease, lost my security deposit, and moved in with a friend across town. I never saw him again. But even now, years later, I still find myself scanning crowds for a man in a dark hoodie with a tilted head and unblinking eyes. And sometimes, when I'm walking alone at night, I get the feeling that somewhere, someone's watching and just hasn't decided to move yet. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe so you don't miss our next chilling horror story with new stories every week.